Good morning, Trumptopia! This is your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zebo. Today is 6/27/2017. The first year of Trumptopia. Welcome, everybody. Hope everything is well with you today. I humbly thank you for tuning in. There is so much to talk about from the last 24 to 48 hours worth of news that I honestly don't even know where to start. It's quite intense. And while I was really trying to organize and prepare myself, I'm also kind of feeling really worked up, actually. As a transcendentalist, or if that word is too strange, as a Buddhist, which I'm not officially technically a Buddhist, but as a person of a Zen mind, or who strives to live in a Zen-like way, getting angry about stuff, getting pissed off, is not something that I enjoy, or have a lot of room to engage in anymore. But today, and I don't want to go down that triggered a whole flashback to like my past. I mean, I used to be an anger ball. And I still get a lot of questions about why I'm so angry, and it's because it's the tone of my voice. I still sometimes speak from my anger ball, like in my anger rhythms. But getting angry is no longer like a valid tactic to me, and I'll talk more about that. Hold on, let me make that note real quick so I remember to include it. I'm going to talk more about how anger is not a valid tactic on Almost Daily Zencast. So tune in for that a little bit later. That'll be a new episode that's just kind of starting to form in my mind right now. But kind of zooming back to today, zooming back to the state of things in Trumptopia, I'm offended. And I know. Offenses like opinions. Everybody, gets offended. And I'm a person who advocates against taking offense as a valid, right next to anger. Neither of those two things are valid tactics. They are ego traps, right? So I'm trying to work it out. I'm trying to work my indignation out, and I'm trying to center myself. But let me tell you what I'm feeling really indignant about, or on whose behalf I'm feeling offended, because it's not about me. I posted, I think it was late last night, I posted an original meme, and I'd already talked about it briefly on previous episodes, but today I really want to zero in on this issue. And I hopefully, want to rally some people out there who can kind of understand the position that I'm taking and will want to join in a new hashtag movement that's not really new. In fact, it's a movement, it's an acronym, it's a hashtag that existed before there were hashtags. I'm offended on behalf of my Christian friends, my fellow Americans who happen to be some flavor of Christians. They are fellow human beings. They are brothers and sisters of mine, of ours in this planet. And as you may have noticed, I am pro-faith. I am pro-spirituality. I'm even pro-equality amongst the different varieties of philosophies about what certain, prophets or enlightened persons might have had to say about things. What I'm really adamantly against at an intellectual and philosophical and spiritual and moral level is ideologically hijacked institutions that we commonly call organized religion. And there's a whole bunch of reasons about, why I am against the ideology and the dogma and the, for lack of a better term, brainwashing that is now part of most every organized religion. And I know that can be offensive. I just said I support people of different faiths and people of different spiritual endeavors, but, a lot of people have not been allowed to comprehend, understand, and personally experience what the difference is between organized religion and being active in one's own spiritual path towards communion with the divine. Here's why I'm offended on behalf of my Christian brothers and sisters, and quite frankly, this is also sort of valid from all other religious or spiritual paths. But let's. I'm not trying to create an exclusionary dynamic here, but this is all my disclaimer saying that I'm equally welcoming and loving and supportive of people who engage in all kinds of spiritual practices. And what I'm against is organized religion, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of one of the most egregious reasons why I'm against organized ideological religious institutions, especially here in the United States, with this issue. And it's all, I think it's the most concise and brief meme I've ever created. The reason I'm not a meme maker who has gone viral, even though I've been tinkering and dabbling and kind of low-key hustling to get noticed out there in social media, is because I am, one of the skills I don't have really sharp in my tool bucket is like being super witty, concise. I usually get really complicated thoughts, really complicated imagery, and needless to say, my memes are not punchy and tight. They're often just a clusterfuck of words. But I mean well. And yesterday's meme is really quite simple. Jesus healed everyone for free. Now, being a former Christian, Catholic, and I know that there's a whole ideological division there amongst really hardcore Christians and Catholics, and they're each arguing that the other is not really a Christian. I don't buy into that. Never have. You are a Christian, in my personal philosophical, intellectual opinion, if you are truly engaged in living to the best of your ability in communion with Christ's teachings, which are not limited to his words, because he also taught by example. Physical, manifest example. And that's one of those places where this is not a new issue for me personally. I used to get into curiously weird debates, especially right when I was testing the waters about my rebellious opinion on the way in which Christ's message and life experiences or life events were taught within the Catholic Church. One of the earliest things I started doing as a young Catholic Christian was investigating other Christian denominations for my own. Because I was lucky and blessed to encounter teachers within the Catholic tradition that had embraced the concept of questioning everything for oneself. And they passed that along, despite other dogma that invokes the requirement of blind faith, which to me is it's one of the biggest red flags for, like, you're being brainwashed. You are being brainwashed if the system you're engaging in and giving your faith to, whatever it is, whether it's political ideology or spiritual ideology or religious ideology or socioeconomic ideology, if whatever ideological construct you're engaging in requires, without any wiggle room, your blind faith, then there's something going on. That's a huge red flag. There's something wrong there. There's some inaccuracy, some bullshit, some lie that they don't want you to figure out, and that if you questioned, you would figure out. Okay? So even as a young man, long before this whole problem that we're currently living through came up, I would argue, you guys, isn't there something wrong about the fact that we call ourselves a Christian nation here in the United States, and yet we profiteer on people's health care? And that's the thing that's really kind of chapping my hide right now, today. And the last, I mean, every time it comes up, every time the phrase healthcare reform gets bandied about by self-proclaimed, God-fearing, Bible-reading, Christos-understanding Christians, in politics, in positions of power, in positions of profiteering, I can't help but get a little riled up. And I'm not Christian anymore. I still accept and acknowledge. In fact, I get into some other, to go on a sidebar, I get into some really weird conversations with folks that otherwise totally agree with a lot of what I have to say, because they haven't caught on, if they're new friends or whatever on social media, they may not catch on right away that I still engage with Christos as a real thing in my philosophy, in my thesis that I'm trying to present to everyone. And it's because I don't believe in throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and I use that phrase a lot. I don't think that, both at a belief level and at a studious, academic, experiential level, I don't think that anything in this universe is black and white, whether we're talking about ideology or we're talking about phenomena, physical phenomena. So I'll make friends with people who are really turned on by the whole movement to get people to acknowledge that Jesus was not a historical figure. And I have a very nuanced opinion on that. I think that there was someone in that place and time that experienced the phenomena commonly called in other cultural circles enlightenment. And that having experienced that phenomena, that individual human being, whatever his or her name might have been, they immediately then began practicing this new comprehension of reality that one gains with any of the phenomena associated with either approaching or achieving enlightenment. We'll go deeper into that in some Almost Daily Zencast segments. What is enlightenment? What does it mean? What evidence is there for Jesus? The being that we historically refer to as Jesus, having had some sort of enlightenment phenomena in their lives. What are the common bullet points here between Jesus and people in other cultures throughout history that did pretty much the same thing? But let's zoom back here now to Christianity in America and Christ's teachings. Having been raised Catholic and having gone through a very long period in my life in that time frame when I was very serious about believing, I was a capital B believer. And trust me, anybody who has lived through that kind of experience, deep down, whether they acknowledge it to their friends or not, deep down, at some point or another, believing was hard work. Because some of that shit in that book is really hard to believe. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? And there's a lot of stuff in that book that just doesn't make sense in terms of the overall picture that they're trying to paint of a compassionate, loving deity or divine entity that's here to somehow help us. It doesn't make sense that God is so self-contradicting in the Bible. But that's, again, a whole nother episode. I got to do like a Bible study segment and like get really deep with that. And I'm sure that'll be interesting and controversial, because I honestly feel like, because I was so engaged and studious and trying so hard to be the best Catholic Christian that I could be, I honestly feel like in today's context, I have forgotten more about the Bible, its contents and its significance and its meaning, its nuance, the historical order in which some of it was extracted and pulled out of the Bible, and other things were inserted and edited into the Bible long after, the living time of Christ. I feel like, at a big picture, my comprehension of what is in that book, usually in a big picture way, outstrips most Bible thumpers' comprehension. They may have more facts and figures, more quotes ready to drop. They may have more garbage in, garbage out, sort of, I memorize this kind of stuff ready to drop. But I think I did a lot more deeper work. I have done a lot deeper work into comprehending what the bloody fuck the message really is supposed to be. Especially if we are Christian, then we're supposed to be understanding Jesus Christ. Not blind-faithedly hero worshiping him, not personality cult, blind-faithedly just doing whatever anybody says under his name. But I think that, and this is old school for me, back from when I really, truly, deeply aspired to go deep into the organized religion. In fact, there was a time during those years that I was very passionately engaged in deciding, because I felt a strong calling, but also sort of wanted to question it, towards becoming a member of the clergy so that I could strive or aspire to becoming the Pope. I know, ridiculous, right? Okay. That's a whole nother series, by the way, because there's a whole long, complicated story personal story about that. But I digress. If our moral responsibility, I'm going to put on the Christian hat, and let's just let go of the differences between the different varieties of Christians, okay? We believe in Jesus, we accept his teachings, right? So we're supposed to, I think the moral imperative at the core of all that is to understand his guiding example and to base our lives, our actions, our decisions at a personal level and at an institutional level, at a community level, at a government level. Practical application of what his teachings truly mean. So in Washington, a bunch of wealthy, connected, mostly white, older men are making decisions that will dramatically impact the well-being, the health, the safety, if you really think about it, in terms of how slashing healthcare can set up the conditions for epidemics and pandemics of millions of Americans. A vast, probably ridiculous, overwhelming majority of those millions of Americans that are going to have their healthcare either completely yanked out from under them or priced out of their capacity to purchase into the system are Christians. Now, for a lot of people, this is not new. We've been staring at this hypocrisy and this phenomena for a while, and we've been scratching our heads and wondering, what the fuck? But for many people, this is something that is going to impact them now. Just now, many people are going to finally wake up when this shit hits the fan, okay? And when they start really thinking about what would Jesus do? That's why I encourage you, my friends, my social media followers, anybody who appreciates what I am trying to engage the public discourse in. See, public discourse is the public square, as we used to call it. The public discourse is a significant and important cornerstone to the American experiment. I mean, we kind of inherited it from Europe, But we were trying to find a new way to advance that and make it, progressive. That's why we included, legal protection status of only one industrial sector in our Constitution, the press. Now, let's not get into an argument about how the press is corrupt, etc. at all. I get it. I know that. I think it's pretty well indicated in my track record. But what I'm pushing for is a more nuanced comprehension, because with each of these issues that we hit, the oppressors of creating artificial division lines along these issues, right? So we got Christians arguing with Christians about how to interpret Christianity. But how many Christians are really looking at what's being done and past it, looking back through history and going, wait a minute, why did we set up health insurance and a healthcare system the way we did? Like, why? When we were created, supposedly, according to the historical revisionists that insist that the Founding Fathers were all Christians and wanted this to be a Christian nation, which, by the way, is not a true thing. That's severely inaccurate. But let's just set that aside and say, fuck it all, okay, let's coddle you and pretend that that's real. Why? Because there's some advantage there in just sort of letting that bullshit ride for a second. It actually adds weight to the concept of holding today's Christian politicians legally accountable somehow. And by legally, I just mean that, like, they're failing to do their system as they pretend. In other words, they've just, it's nothing but lies and misrepresentation, right? That those politicians that stand up in our public square, and that engage in our American public discourse and publicly, overtly self-identify as God-fearing, Jesus-loving, Bible-thumping Christians, the rest of us have to hold them accountable. Any one of us, whether we are Christian, Catholic, Buddhist, Zen, anarchist, atheist, whatever, whether you have zero interest in spirituality or religion, this is part of the civic duty of the public experiment of this American system. It's we the people, right? And yet somehow we've let ourselves get cajoled and coddled and seduced into letting the politicians not really represent us. And then we bitch and moan and complain, and I get it, protesting is one form of attempting to hold them accountable. And I, as I have in many episodes past and on my post past, I applaud and support, and I'm there with in spirit and love with any and all movements that are engaging their politicians at the local level, going to town hall meetings, organizing town hall meetings with their state and federal representatives, and demanding that they show up and holding them accountable for not showing up. I think we need to step it up a notch, because these motherfuckers are out there, and the law that they're about to pass is going to ruin people's lives. And they're doing it, maybe not in a really heavy-handed way, not in a heavily overt way, but simply by the fact of being self-identified throughout their lives as Christians, and saying things like "God bless America." They are doing this healthcare. I loathe to call it reform, and it's not even. Let's be really honest, folks. It's not even repeal and replace, because they're keeping a huge chunk of what is Obamacare, but very carefully, with an engineering kind of mindset, yanking out shit that is part and counterpart to the things that they're keeping, and that without which the other things that they're pulling out, like the mandate, the individual mandate and whatnot, it's what made it needed work. It needed adjusting. Everyone's admitting that. Obama himself has said that. The current minority leader, Chuck Schumer, has said that. Everybody said that. Yeah, this needs improvement. It's not the best of the best. Now, mind you, I'm not a fool. I'm not an Obama follower. I'm not a Democrat. I know that the Democratic-Republican divide is a white hat, black hat game. It's a good guy versus bad guy. It's a good cop versus bad cop game. What I'm saying is a huge swath of them up there are doing all of this bullshit. And somewhere in their house there's a crucifix. Somewhere in their house there's a Bible. I wish that Jesus could just shine, ride a glorious corona of radiant sunlight beams out of the sky right now above America, above the capital of every state. Because he could, Christos can manifest in one avatar or in a million. Because Christos is not a Christos is bigger than the person in the human flesh that we identify as Jesus Christ. And like I said, that'll be for another episode. But I wish let us all pray that Christ shows up and bitch slaps these motherfuckers in the face and then forgives them. Because he would do that. He was a tough love kind of guy. He was a pacifist, and he was into nonviolence, big time. But I'm sure he wasn't above bitch slapping some motherfucker in the face and then going, "Hey, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. This is not what I taught. This is not what I was talking about. And you're taking advantage of the people who are choosing to believe that you are sharing the truth." Since that is not likely to happen, but who knows, maybe it is. Maybe if we can get enough people to meditate and pray on that, maybe Jesus Christ himself will show up. That'd be cool. Because let me tell you what, if Jesus Christ himself showed up, hey, this is old, right? This is trite and passé and jaded. But I think the vast majority of hardcore, alt-right, GOP, sort of crazy Christians would probably kill him all over again. Because he's not going to look like what they've been lied to that he looks like. Christ wouldn't have blue eyes and fair skin and blonde hair. Not the body Christ, not the man that we call Jesus who was born in the Middle East. He'd look like a Middle Eastern guy. But beyond that, they couldn't kill him, right? Because if it's the second coming, he's already in his non-corporeal form. But I would love his non-corporeal form to show up looking really fucking brown and Middle Eastern. And stand before every Christian politician and go, "Hey, what are you doing in my name now? Because I'm that guy that you're doing all this in the name of." How does Trump care? And for that matter, how did Obama care? Other than sort of pretending to be a step in the right direction. How does the healthcare system for the last 100 years, well, maybe not 100 years, let's for sure definitely go back 50 years. How does that healthcare system represent what Jesus, not me personally, but I'm, pretending to quote Christ, if he showed up, he'd ask that question. How does any system in America, which sort of pretends to call itself a Christian nation, reflect the teachings of Christ? Christ did not teach us to have fundraisers to help the poor. That is not what Jesus taught. Christ did not teach his followers to funnel money out of impoverished neighborhoods through their worship centers and send it to a centralized governing palace filled with gold and art and ridiculously useless, expensive things. I am pretty sure that if the Catholic Church alone decided to man up and really live Christ's teachings and sold all of their possessions and then gave all of that money to the poor, which is literally the teaching of Christ, we could end world hunger, poverty, homelessness, and all the things that plague our most our most humble and our most poor brothers and sisters in the world. But the Catholic Church doesn't do that, right? Neither does any corporate megachurch in the world. Jesus Christ did not say, raise $1 bazillion, build a giant multi-billion-dollar entertainment complex, and then do stupid little shows in my name so they can keep giving you money. Jesus Christ did not teach us to start congregations so we could buy our own private jets and live in 200-bedroom super mansions. And yet, people who claim to understand and teach the words of Christ are doing that. This is not just an American problem, but it is really egregiously a sort of stereotypically American problem. We are exporting this. We are exporting this free market profiteering Christianity all around the world. And it is high time, in my personal opinion, that we unite as non-Christians, as Christians, as people from all over the spiritual spectrum to hold Christian institutions, Christian business corporations, Christian politicians, and anywhere, just hold all of them accountable and suss out anywhere that there is such a thing as Christian corruption. Now, before I wrap things up, because my time for this segment's running out, I want to point out that this is not in any way, shape, or form targeting Christians. I am probably on the forefront of one of the most unpopular and offensive opinions out there today, which is Christianity and Judaism and Islam and Buddhism have been hijacked, infiltrated, corrupted by the money and the agents and the ideology of the military-industrial complex and the elitist 1% that profiteers on everything about human life in our postmodern society. We can keep fighting the good fight on these individual fronts, or we can start taking larger steps back and trying to manifest real transformative healing. Because you know what? That kind of, this corruption that I'm pointing out, this hypocrisy in Christianity and all its little flavors, not only impacts American society as a whole, it impacts individuals because it is traumatizing. It is traumatizing to bend over backwards to try to maintain an adherence to a belief system, to an ideological construct, or an organization that is clearly and overtly violating the teachings that they're teaching you. That is a kind of trauma that right now I'm sure no one's really too concerned about, because there is a lot of Christian bashing, just as there is a lot of Muslim hate and there's a lot of Jew hate. There's a people in America, our pastime is picking sides and hating ourselves, vis-a-vis hating each other, by dividing ourselves up into different groups along divisions that quite honestly don't make any fucking sense. And in this area, it's really quite offensive. I didn't even talk about the details, the news details, which I guess I'll address that in a segment of news, breaking news. But this is outrageous, and I know I've talked about it before. And I apologize to anyone who tried to, who's trying to be a good fan and listen. And this episode's a little bit redundant. But if it's redundant, that means I'm really trying to reach you and encourage you and inspire you to take action. What can we do about this? How can we hold politicians accountable? As we are seeing, as we have seen in the days leading up to and since the inauguration, taking an idea or a question that is really valid and really important and really hard for a politician to answer, and bringing the pressure to that politician by bringing 5 friends, 10 friends, and having those friends bring a few friends to show up and ask that one question or make that one statement. I applaud everyone who's been organizing and organizing well. I heard about it. I've been hearing really great things about a group that I downloaded their like starter kit. They have a package you can go get on their website of how to organize in your community according to these very effective, time-tested community organizing principles. And the group is called Indivisible.org. Indivisible.org. United we stand, divided we fall. I have to, totally admit that right here, right now, in this moment, I can't give you a lot of awesome bullet point details, and that's because I'm a one-man operation, and while I have checked into their website and stuff, I don't have the stuff right in front of me, and that's fine. It wasn't the thrust of this episode. But go check them out. And whether you use their platform or another, or you just start engaging your local community on a face-to-face, one-on-one basis, let's, with compassion and kindness and not anger, because getting angry about it, that's why I opened with this, I'm struggling with my anger about this, because as silly as it sounds, it makes a huge difference whether you confront someone with anger about an issue that you'd like to engage them on and hopefully inspire, encourage, or cajole them to change their behavior about, or whether you engage someone with compassion and love and comprehension and understanding and support and try to sort of help them comprehend that they need to get their act together and engage in their own transformation and change of behavior about this subject. And this subject epically affects so many things, because we live in a country divided on so many levels, but one of the primary bifurcations that we are suffering through that's causing us all emotional and spiritual trauma is these series of divisions along religion. In the land of the free, where freedom of religion is expressly protected, we are divided and pitted against each other on purpose by the same institutions that are supposed to be working in favor of protecting our religious freedoms in order to experience nothing but conflict. Conflict between Christians and all of non-Christians. Conflict between atheists and Christians. Conflict between Muslims and the rest of America. Conflict between Muslims and Palestinians. Conflict. All of this is on purpose. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit broken record-y. And I think that the time of being mad, there's always truth in that saying, if you're not mad, then you're not paying enough attention. There's a second phase, though. That's just an early onset phase of realization. I don't want to call it waking up. Too many people are using the term waking up very incorrectly, because if you're still spewing hate, then you're not woke, my friend. Waking up is a whole higher order of shit. So if you just realize that taxation is theft and you're spewing anti some other person hate, you ain't woke. Stop using the term. If you're a Christian and you're hating on Muslims, you're not doing a very good job of being Christian. Shut the fuck up, go read the Bible, and pray. And meditate. Because it's in there. Jesus tells us to meditate. God tells us to meditate in the Bible. Most of the more clear and overt indications of that have been mutilated through the dumbing down of language. The clearest and easiest example of this is, I think it's Genesis, and in other places. In the beginning, God was with the Word. That phrase doesn't make sense because it's not the original fucking phrase. In the original phrase, word was not word, which is currently interpreted in postmodern context to somehow mean law. In the original Aramaic, it was logos. In the beginning, God and logos. Take a survey, and I bet you less than 10% of Christians know what logos even fucking is. And that's really important. It's actually really critical to a comprehension of what's going on inside of Christianity. If you're a Christian, or if you know a Christian, ask them. Ask yourself, what is logos? If you don't know, or if your definition is mostly a postmodern, reinterpretation of logos, then you don't understand your own religion. You don't understand your own relationship to the divine thing. And you're being, then there's examples like that throughout. And I am running out of time. We'll talk about those things a little bit more in a much more spiritual way. The thrust of this episode, my friends, is that we're all in this together, okay? The whole reason I call this particular segment Good Morning Trumptopia is that I'm trying to wake all Americans up. And I'm trying to wake up the people who already are resisting Trump as much as I'm trying to wake up those who are clinging to their need to support Trump. Because we're all living through Trumptopia together. And there's a lot more to talk about. But for now, I guess I'm going to have to call it a morning or a day, because it's really already the afternoon here. But it doesn't matter, right? Thank you for tuning in. This has been Good Morning Trumptopia for the 27th day of the 6th month of the first year of Trumptopia, otherwise known as 2017. If you agree with what I just rambled about, please share my meme about Jesus healing people for free. I never got to my main thrust. I'm going to close on this, friends. Let's close with this. They are pretending to be fighting for you, for the little guy, for all of Americans who've been left behind, and yet they are behaving in incredibly un-Christian fashion while waving the banner of Christendom, and this is a Christian country. Let's flood them with the question, is this what Jesus would do? And let's not stop asking that question until they break down and admit the truth. No. Neither Obamacare nor Trumpcare and any of this mishigas about how to fix it and this whole fucking system of taking people's money for not really healing them is exactly the opposite of what Jesus would do. Let's bring that statement vis-a-vis that question to them now. Hashtag what would Jesus do? Hashtag this is not what Jesus would do. Go. Flood your local politicians, flood the national level politicians. Let's spam them with this. And it doesn't matter if you are Christian or not. Help me get this word out so that Trumptopia will finally stop pretending to be something that it's not. And we can go back, we can really make America great again, and we can really make Christianity great again. And then we can work on making Islam great again. And we can work on making Judaism great again. Controversial statements, right? Thanks for tuning in. May peace, love, and grooviness be with you today, my friends. And courage, and strength, and forgiveness, and compassion. And may anger, hate, stress, anxiety, fear, may they not find any room in your heart. Peace out. Share the love. Post your questions, comments, or submit them to my email, theincorrigiblemrzappo@gmail.com. Links and stuff on the profile. The song is Lion's Heaven from Art of Escapism. You can find it on freemusicarchive.org. This has been a SeaTag Studios production, and I am the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Peace out.